Hey guys, it's Matt from Bullion Now, and I've got a very special treat in this interview series. I have here with me eWaste Ben. How are you going?
G'day, mate. Good. Thanks, mate. How you going?
I'm very well, and I'm very excited. I just mentioned before we kicked off that this is a spread unlike any other that I've seen in this interview series thus far. So, do you want to maybe give us a bit of an introduction as to what eWaste is and what you're all about?
Oh, well, basically, e-waste is electronic waste. So your redundant computers, televisions, and the whole lot. So I got into it probably 7 or 8 years ago, and mostly because I was interested in gathering as much precious metals as I could, as cheaply as I could. So I thought, well, how about I just go out there and do a bit of a small business to gather it. And basically, like, for instance, that's a PC motherboard, and
Yeah.
so from there it started, and I just sort of taught myself how to go about getting items for precious metal recovery, gold recovery. And so, yeah, pretty much every electronic that you use, even the camera that you're using right now, has probably 16 different metals in it, and most of them are precious metals: gold, silver, platinum, palladium, rhodium, ruthenium, you name it. It's all in there. And unfortunately, there was a long period of time during, sort of prior to the last couple of years, most e-waste was going into landfill. So what a absolute waste and a tragedy that all these precious metals, even basic metals like your copper here,
Yeah.
just going into landfill. So yeah, e-waste is basically any electronics, and within those electronics there are probably 16 to 18 different metals that can be recovered. Yeah.
Unbelievable. And so, I can see you've got a lot of, I guess, the raw materials there. So you actually go through a process and extract the precious metals from these items. Is that what you get up to?
Well, that's the whole end game idea, but it's a very technical and quite even dangerous for someone that doesn't really know what they're doing when it comes to recovering gold and silver from this kind of stuff, because you need to use chemicals and all that, so I never sort of bothered to actually extract any of the precious metals, rather than just keeping them as for what they are, as commodities. And we don't, because we know what's in, say, this Pentium Pro ceramic CPU, we know the amount of gold that we can get out of this, probably on average about 0.3 of a gram for this CPU. And so same with most things, there's really no need to recover the gold, yourself,
Yeah.
because we know how much is, like, in this gold finger here, in this box, there's probably about 8 grams of gold per kilo of these gold fingers. So I can just trade this as, okay, here's potentially 8 grams of gold, and I can sell it as for what it's worth. Basically, obviously, you've got to take into account chemicals and time and all that. So you're not going to get as much. But having said that, there are a lot of people that are in the hobby of extracting precious metals from e-waste, and so they're not really looking for the actual to make a profit out of it. They're just looking to do the process, and so therefore they're happy to pay what they're going to get. So if I give them a kilo of gold fingers from say your slot cards, those gold fingers there, they'll probably pay me the equivalent to 8 grams of gold, just so they can get the material to process themselves. So as far as me, probably when I retire from collecting e-waste and recycling it, I'll probably look into starting to recover. But for now, I'm just stockpiling it as a precious metal. To me, I don't see any difference than holding a 1 ounce bar, pure gold, and
Yeah.
I know that I'm going to get pure gold out of this. It's just going to take a lot of research, and so that's it.
That is a fascinating process. It's something that we often talk about in the industry when we talk about the industrial applications for precious metals, but it's fascinating to see it in this form, represented in this form, and the fact that you're actually using this as a method to accumulate your precious metals. I find that unbelievable. That's incredibly cool. So I'm curious as to what. So let's say I'm a total novice in this field. Could you give me a bit of an overview as to, say, for instance, your standard, maybe your standard PC at home? How much precious metals is actually in something like that?
Well, it's a hard question to answer because as time goes on, the modern technology sort of reduces the precious metals they need to use. For instance, back in, say, the 90s, they used a lot of palladium. These days, they use very little palladium. They use alternative metals and more so base metals to like copper and nickel and so on to substitute. And so because back in the old days, say, for instance, these came out in the mid-90s. So that time gold was only worth, what was it, $400 to $800 an ounce.
Yeah, yep.
So it was very cheap, and they needed to, because their technologies weren't so spectacular, they needed to really load the gold and the silver into it to make sure that the connections are all perfect. And but as time's gone by, you've got a motherboard like this, which is out of a reasonably modern, say about 5-year-old motherboard.
Yeah.
And there are very little precious metals. It's when it comes to precious metal recovery these days, it's all about volume. I suppose it's always been that, but these days they need to process tons and tons of this stuff to get the little bit of gold from, say, these North and South Bridge chips. This one here is called in the game a gold corner BGA, and so these are quite high in gold recovery. Again, probably about 6 to 8 grams per kilo, whereas these chips here, they've got a silicon top. There is traces of gold and silver in there, but virtually non-existent, really. And so, so this is a 5-year-old motherboard. If you go a 10-year-old motherboard, it's going to have more prominent gold pins and so on, and then it's all about going back. So these days, it's not. It's a lot harder to get a real good value. So CPUs these days are non-ceramic, very little gold. In fact, most of the CPUs these days, it's not about gold recovery. It's more about copper recovery and base metal. Same with these things. For an average Joe Blow to say pull apart PCs to go for gold recovery, a motherboard is not really recommended because these go to large refiners that can extract all the metals out of there. So they're also getting the copper and all that kind of thing. So that's where they're making your money. If you're just going for gold, you're going to get very little. In fact, you can sell this as a commodity, just as it is a motherboard, which I buy myself.
Yep.
But yeah, like for instance, that's a more of a vintage slot card.
Yeah.
You can see that it's got beautiful gold fingers. Now the difference, say, that's a modern card. It looks like a Ethernet card. So it's very fine gold, and it's not
okay. So it's more like a plating now, as opposed to, or like a very thin plating.
Yeah, it's a very thin plating alloyed with other kind of metals to make it as cheap as possible. Whereas these old ones, really thick, and you might be able to see the difference in a color. That this has got a really orangey, almost looks like pure gold.
Yeah, and it's good comparison.
Yeah, it's very close. So that's the old stuff. That was the days when it was really worth going for e-waste for precious metal recovery. These days, I'll probably get one PC in every 300 PCs that is of what I would consider vintage. These days they're very few and far between.
Yeah.
Just the old ones that are sitting in people's backyards, in garages that they've been sitting there for 20 years or so. But you can see here, like this chip here. It's got a gold cap on it. It's a ceramic chip. There's gold bonding wires all within this, underneath this ceramic, connecting to each leg. Yeah, pretty much this sort of stuff is loaded. Really good gold recovery. We just don't get enough of it. So for people that are looking at getting into e-waste these days, it's more about getting your stuff and repurposing your e-waste. So for instance, I do schools. I might get 30 or 40 laptops from a school. I'll look to repurpose them. So reload Windows on them, freshen them up, and sell them on the secondary market. That's these days, that's what most e-waste recyclers are, how they're making their money, rather than your gold recovery and your precious metal recovery. That's your last resort. If you can't do anything or they're really busted up, we go for gold recovery. But yeah, that's just how it is. Yeah. Sorry if I'm going on a little bit too long.
This is absolutely fascinating. This is a really, really interesting chat. And I think even more so because it's an area that I just have zero knowledge in. So everything you're saying, I'm trying to sort of absorb it all. It's really interesting. And I'm curious now as to whether or not we're referring a lot to, I imagine we're referring a lot to PCs, like old PCs. Is this the kind of thing is it also applicable to things like, if I've got an old NES at home, does that have, are there similar features to the old like video game systems or cameras and stuff like that?
Oh, okay. Yeah, absolutely. Your gaming consoles all have some kind of motherboard in there. And obviously, the older they are, the better, the more gold recovery. But yeah, absolutely. Gaming consoles, cell phones, I think it used to average about, these days, it's probably about $15,000 worth of gold per ton of scrap cell phones.
Wow.
Back in the old Nokia 2080s or whatever they were, even more so, they were loaded with gold. But these days, they've worked out, like the circuit boards used to be like really big, and now these days the circuit boards are just really tiny. So, but yeah, all e-waste has some form of, obviously have some form of metals. They always have some kind of circuit board, whether they've got any gold in them, mostly silver. But, like e-waste is also, we've got copper.
Yeah.
And this is one, the hobbies of mine. This is one of my own poured copper bars. And so this came from basically just copper wire that we've taken out of e-waste and stripped it down and melted it down and to form, this is a 4 kilogram block. Hey, it was 12 months ago, and there's a lot of scrappers. So it's not just, so much e-waste, but scrappers scrapping out, refrigerators and dishwashers and you name it, they'll scrap it out. And they're going for the copper as well, because 12 months ago, this was worth, like $6 a kilo, and today it's worth $11 to $12 a kilo. And that's scrap price. That's not spot price, but it's certainly not gold. But so that's another side. This is more copper when it comes to e-waste collection. This is more of our bread and butter.
Okay.
So we're going for the gold recovery and stuff, but we're turning over a lot of copper wire and stuff like that to scrap yards. Obviously, it's not worth melting a copper wire into a bar to then sell to a scrapyard. But this actually has collectible value, if you like. People like holding metal.
They do indeed. Yeah.
How many people can hold a 4 kilogram gold bar? Not many. So it's a nice addition to a metal stack. If you're interested in metals. Copper, silver, gold, it's all good.
Absolutely. And so I think you sort of alluded to it, that with the progression of technology, you've seen a reduction in potential precious metals recovery. Is that something that you see progressing in the future and it becoming less and less perhaps viable to do what you're doing? Or is it something that you would just adapt and change with as the technology evolves?
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to become less and less viable for a smaller guy, because it's all about these days volume. Like the large e-waste recyclers, they're turning over say for instance, the guy that buys my motherboards and processes them, he might turn over 100 ton of e-waste a month. And so that's a lot of stuff. Yeah. And so out of that, yeah, sure, they get their precious metals, and we don't actually have anything here in Australia that any company that can actually process the metals. But yeah, slowly, it's becoming less about the precious metals and more about the repurposing and the putting it back onto the market if what you can. If you look at schools these days, they used to have really big laptops and really big PCs. Now it's they got tablets and the Chromebooks and so on that don't even have hard drives. They're all connected to Google sort of the big brother hard drive in the world. So yeah, everything's reducing in size. And like I said, with cell phones, they used to be big, chunky, and they had massive circuit boards in there. Now it's just less and less. And so yeah, the future of e-waste, and well, there's no doubt there's still a lot of competition. In the last few years, a lot of new players have come into the game. Admittedly, they're mostly repurposers. They're not really interested in scrapping out a PC to get the boards and then sell the boards as commodities. They're more for repurposing, and that's where the money is these days. Yeah. So to answer your question, yeah, it's becoming more and more redundant as time goes by. So within 5 years, who knows what the technologies are going to bring,
Yeah, for sure. Well, it'll be fascinating. And I noticed you have got your Perth minted gold bar there. So you're a bit of a stacker as well, in addition to doing the e-waste recovery?
Absolutely. I started off as a stacker probably in, I think it was 2009. And I was, as most new stackers, you become obsessed by, gold and silver, and you just want to, you put in an order, and you just, before it comes, you're looking to order something else. And so that's basically what got me into e-waste in the first place. I was just looking at, how can I get more of this? Well, not so much this, but more of this, silver. And so this is what I got into, and it turned out into a business. So, sort of I look at it both ways. I've got my stockpile of potential, gold recovery, silver recovery items, and it also allows me to continue stacking. So, stacking, it's where it's all about. In fact, I've bought a little bit from Bullion Now myself. I've met you, actually. I've been in the store a couple of times. And
nice.
So I got a couple of the platinum tigers.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I like them. They're pretty cool. At the time when you guys had them on the website, you only had about 4 of them, and they lasted like 3 seconds. It was really nice.
It wasn't long.
At the same time, your website was crashing, and there was all sorts.
Oh, don't remind me.
Yeah, but I noticed you've got the new kookaburra has just come in.
Yes,
today, so
they have just arrived.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to putting in an order and getting my backlog of orders from you guys. That's another good thing you've got going, is that a lot of us are just basic, like me. I'm a scrapper. I'm a bit of an e-waste recycler. I can't afford to buy, like tubes and tubes or kilos and kilos of it at the same. So I just like to accumulate, a little bit at a time. So the good thing about what you've got going in your store is I see a new coin that I'm interested in.
Yeah.
I can buy it and then just use or keep it for 3 months. So during that 3 months, I'll just, I'll buy the next one, a couple of kooks, a koala, and so on. And by 3 months up, I've got a decent enough collection and worthwhile getting delivery. So that's a little plug for this.
Good stuff. Thank you very much. I'm glad it's working for you. And I'm also curious, for anyone that has an interest in this field, or has now, as a result of, even just having this conversation, it's now something that it was never on my radar. It's just something that I never gave a great deal of thought to. If someone is now, as a result of this, developing an interest in this, where would you suggest they start?
Well, probably these days, you're best to start at looking at your local laws. A lot of things are changing as far as e-waste is concerned.
Yep.
EPA certainly getting onto it, because there used to be quite a few rogue sort of people in the game that were just, it's not just about getting your precious metals and all that. It's what you're doing with the end byproduct, your plastics, all kinds of toxic potentially. So you need to establish firstly work out what you're going to do with it. What do you want to go for gold recovery, or you're looking at just accumulating commodities to then sell to someone that's going to go for the precious metal. So then you need to look for who's going to take it off your hands, and where you're going to get rid of your unwanted stuff like plastic and so on. So, and yeah, local laws, it's really complicated these days. The larger you get, and the more the more the EPA are going to be interested in what you're doing and how you're stockpiling, storing stuff. You can't keep e-waste basically exposed. It needs to all be undercover. So you need to have either a factory or a very large garage. And then just, look, the competition's out there. It's big competition, but for smaller guys, I personally offer a free e-waste pickup, and I do pickups in Melbourne CBD. And so there's a lot of that kind of work available, because a lot of the bigger e-waste recyclers, don't have time to go and pick up 10 PCs and a few printers and a couple of monitors, and so on. So, there's so many offices in the city. Everyone's trying to get rid of small quantities. So, yeah, I think there's a big potential there, and not just here in Australia, but all over the world, pretty much. It's just all about the legalities. I know, for instance, in the UK, they're very strict on, putting e-waste recycling in your business name, or, associating with that. You've got to get permits and all that. So it's, all I can say is you just got to research your own local laws and what's going on. And if you can go to find an e-waste recyclist in your state, go and speak to them, and see what they're doing. Just check them out. But it's getting harder to get into this business these days. There is a lot of competition, but there is still a lot of opportunities. Dealing in inner city pickups, office buildings. The only thing is you've got to, catch the lift up to the 24th floor and go back down. And by the time you come down, we only have 15-minute loading zones here. So by the time you come down, there's a parking inspector there giving you a ticket,
Yeah, absolutely.
You can't win, sometimes. But yeah, just do a lot of research. That's, on my YouTube channel over the years, I've, tried to give out, as much advice as I can for new people coming into the business. And I do get a lot of comments from people, saying, I've given it a go. I'm in, in Texas, and I'm, giving it a go. And I got my first pickup this week, and I've done a school or something like that, and, schools are also a really good, way to get into it as well, because they're all, they don't know what to do with it. They're throwing their stuff into dumpsters and stuff like that, so, yeah, there you go. So,
oh, fantastic. It's been absolutely enlightening, and I appreciate you taking the time to have a chat and walk me through a little bit of what it is that you enjoy and what you do. And I really appreciate it. Thanks a lot for taking the time, and hopefully we can do this again at some point, and I can do my own research, learn a little bit about it, and I can ask you some more educated questions perhaps.
Yeah, no problem. I'll try not to ramble on next time too.
Oh, it's been fascinating. I really enjoy it. So thank you very much, and I look forward to doing it again sometime in the near future.
All right, lovely, mate. Nice to talk to you, and keep stacking, and have fun out there.
No worries. You too. Thanks a lot, mate.
Bye.